Hi, it's me, Crystal. So I wanted to do kind of a book haul, and it's in two parts. So the first part is I was trying to see if I could find books that I was interested in using very specific search terms. So basically, I'm looking for book recommendations with very specific parameters. And then the second part of this video is just me kind of analyzing like what has the biggest influence on my book buying habits. I thought it would be fun to talk about it. So for this first part of the video, the specific search terms I was looking under, I wanted to see if I could find a book I was interested in for books that were recommended to Tauruses. If you don't know, I am a Taurus. I'm not super into astrology, part of the reasoning being that me and my sister are both Tauruses, and my sister's birthday is 2 weeks before mine. And some people will say that where you fall on the astrological sign has something to do with it, blah, blah, blah. The fact of the matter is we are both Tauruses, and personality-wise, we're not that much alike. So I tend to look at astrology as something that's like fun, but not something that I take seriously. But I still wanted to see if I looked for book recommendations for Tauruses, if I could find something that I was interested in. And then I also wanted to see if I could find something for my Enneagram type, which is type 4, my Myers-Briggs type, which is INTJ. And I was also looking for fairy tale poetry and a very specific kind of witch book. So if you're not familiar with the Enneagram and Myers-Briggs, they're just like personality tests, and based on how you answer questions, you get put into one of 9 personality types for the Enneagram and one of 16 for Myers-Briggs. Technically, there's like 32 for Myers-Briggs because there's 2 different kind of modes, I guess, you can be in for your Myers-Briggs type, but that's neither here nor there. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know what the other type is. I know one of them is turbulent because that's the one I am. Like, I am a turbulent INTJ, and turbulent INTJs tend to be more emotional than like the other kind of INTJs. But before I get started, if you don't know, type 4s and INTJs are the least common personality type out of all the other personality types. And on one hand, that makes us feel really special because we like to be like unique or whatever. But on the other hand, it also literally, puts us in the minority when it comes to personality types in general. And because of that, and also because of, when I was growing up, a lot of people are telling me that I'm odd or that I'm not like other people or whatever. I like to make I'm not like other girl trope jokes. And recently, like over the last few months, I've realized that there are some people who hate that trope to the point that they're actually being incredibly rude about it. It's like, how dare this person not be like other people, and they don't like the characters and they dog them out. And it's a little triggering for me personally, just because when you are a little different, people can be incredibly rude to you. And you pretty much have, of 2 options. You can either try to fit in, or you can just let your weird flag fly, which is what I chose to do because it's honestly, it's just easier. And I usually think about it in terms of like, gemstones, because I like shiny gemstones. And it's like everybody wants to be a diamond because diamonds are so shiny and beautiful and like rich or whatever. But everybody's not a diamond. Like, some people are emeralds or sapphires or pearls or tourmaline. And you might be thinking, what's a tourmaline? And that's part of my point. But also, like, it's okay. Like, the tourmaline and the pearls are just as beautiful as the diamonds and the garnets and the sapphires and the rubies or whatever. And I know I have to take responsibility for, being upset when people are, when I feel like I'm being attacked, or when I feel like other people are being attacked for being different. Side note, in this side tangent, I was watching this video, I think this was a few months ago now, but she was talking about Alina from the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and she was talking about how, like, Alina falls into that not like other girls trope, but Alina doesn't fall into the not like other girls trope. Alina falls into the chosen one trope. But people like the girl in that video, and a couple of other people who I've had interactions with, have been, like I said, extremely condescending about that trope. And I know it's my fault for, like, getting offended, but I also kind of wish that they would just, like, let people be different and let people have a different opinion and let people think differently from them, because it's becoming incredibly toxic. But anyway, in true me fashion, when I first came across multiple people who were dogging on this trope so hard, the first thing I was thinking is, why does no one like me, right? And then it was a little bit of an angrier version of, why does no one like me? But then, in true me fashion, I eventually get to the point where I kind of stop caring what those specific people think, because it's like, whatever. They clearly have issues. Like, if you feel like you need to bully someone or dog on someone or kick someone because they're different, they clearly have issues, and I have my own issues. I've been dealing with my issues a lot this year specifically, and I literally do not have time to care about everybody else's issue. For the most part, I think tropes are fun. They're tropes for a reason. And I think that it's okay if you really like a certain trope, or if you feel a kinship with a certain trope. And it's okay if I like the she's not like other girls trope. I would appreciate it if people could dislike the trope without dogging, what it means so much, because there are real people who aren't trying to be like other people. And if you wanted to be like other people, like, that's fine. There's safety in numbers. You get to go to parties. You get to have more fun. You're not over here in the dark all alone like the rest of us. But there are real people who, feel, like I said, like some kind of a kinship with certain kinds of tropes and certain kinds of characters. And I don't think they're doing it on purpose, but they are being incredibly rude, in my opinion. And I know why people are getting butthurt about it is because they're assigning a value judgment to it. And someone in my writing circle actually wrote a post about this earlier this year, where she was like, there's a value judgment there. Like, the girl who's not like other girls is better than all the other girls, and that's not okay. And I'm like, who cares? Like, it's not that serious, one. For two, I'm like, the girl who's not like other girls often doesn't feel like she's better than anybody else, because she feels like she's worth less because she's not a diamond or a sapphire or a ruby, and everybody else is, and she's over there being a garnet or a tourmaline. And like I said, some people don't even know what that is. And so it's like, you don't have a place in the world and no one knows what it is. Like, if you think about going into a jewelry store, you can find diamonds and rubies and sapphires and emeralds, but if you ask for a tourmaline necklace, you're probably not going to be able to find one in your average jewelry store. They just don't have them there. I'm using this as an example because I actually really want a tourmaline pendant and I can't find one. But what I'm saying is, all the gemstones are beautiful. They all have value. If somebody is assigning a value judgment to it, that's coming from them. It's not coming from anybody else. And even if it is, you're still accepting that value judgment, and that's still on that person. And so it's like, if you have a book and the character is not like other girls, the person who's upset about that trope is a person who is interpreting that as, oh, that girl thinks she's better than everybody else. And it's like, no, she probably doesn't. And two, that's your problem. That's not the trope's problem. It's not the author's problem. It's your problem for interpreting it that way in the first place. Because I personally never interpreted it that way. I interpreted it the way I said, that oftentimes I felt like I have less value than other people because I'm weird and I don't really have anywhere to go. Like, my group of friends, all through middle school and high school, I went to 2 different high schools, but this held true for my second high school as well, is that the people I hung out with the most, I jokingly, referred to my group of friends as the Island of Misfit Toys. If you've ever seen Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, they had this island of unwanted toys. And I thought about my friend group that way because we weren't friends necessarily because we had stuff in common. We were friends because none of us had anywhere else to go. And so we just kind of banded together and accepted each other. And it didn't matter, if we had different interests and, different hobbies or whatever. We just kind of accepted the other person's differences. And, the good thing is that I always had people to hang out with. I always had people to eat lunch with, people to hang out with, pep rallies, people to go to the mall with, people to go to the movies with. The bad thing is that there was just a lot of bullying and a lot of people trying to get me to change. So it's just a little triggering for me. And I know people don't mean it that way, but it just hits on issues that I don't deal with very often, because in my adult life, I'm not really around anybody who's trying to get me to change or isn't accepting me for, the kind of weird that I am. And again, I know that's my fault. I'm going to move on. So anyway, all that said, even though type 4s and INTJ, you know, is the less common personality type, there's still a lot of us, and I do still feel like that we have certain personality traits in common that can be boiled down into a book recommendation. Fun fact, I had an editor tell me one time who was British that in the kind of circles that she went around, when you call somebody common, you're basically calling them a whore. And I thought that was hilarious. But in the examples that I'm talking about, common means the majority of people, and less common means the not majority. So first up, being that I'm not super into astrology, I wanted to see if I could find a book recommendation for Tauruses that I was actually interested in. And I just Googled it, fiction book recommendations for Taurus, and I found a lot of articles and even a couple of videos, but I will link the video below because she has other videos for other astrological sign recommendations if you're interested. And she has like a few books for each astrological sign. So I'm linking her video specifically because this is the video that I felt like she did a really good job. Like when she was talking about Tauruses, you know, she was actually saying things that I could relate to for not the first time in my life, but it doesn't happen very often that people are talking about Tauruses and I can actually relate on that level. But she was talking about how like we like to be comfortable, and that is very true for me. Like there are other like personality types that my brother was telling me about one time, that like there are people who they have to win, there are people who have to be right, you know, there are people who have to be liked, and there are people who have to be comfortable, and there might be some other ones, but those are the only ones I can remember. And obviously I fall into the category of I like to be comfortable. And so I ended up picking up one book out of everything that was on the list. She also had The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, I think is the author's name, but I'm not interested in that book. But I did end up picking up The Golem and the Genie by Helene Wecker, and I don't really know how to describe this book. It's basically about this guy gets a golem made because he wants like a life partner. And the guy who makes a golem for him is like, are you sure you want a golem as a life partner? They're kind of violent. But anyway, he gets his golem, and I don't know if he dies or if the golem kills him. I don't know. But the golem meets this genie, and Ginny is like a genie, and he was somebody else's genie. So I don't know if other people die, and then they find each other and they get in a relationship. So I don't know what this book is about. I don't know if it's about them coming together and how like they meet. I don't know. I don't really know what kind of book this is. I know it's some kind of fantasy. Maybe it's like literary fantasy. But I was listening to an audiobook sample and I really liked the vibe and the writing. So I decided to give it a try, and we'll see if, you know, this hits right when I read it. But specifically, the main reason why I went ahead and picked this up is, one, I did see this on multiple lists, and two, I have looked at this book before and turned it down because I was looking through the blurb and I'm like, I don't really know about this. But hey, if they say a Taurus will like this, then I am willing to give it a try. So next, I tried to find book recommendations for INTJs, and this actually took a couple of tries because not only did I run into a bunch of nonfiction books, even though I specifically told Google I wanted fiction book recommendations, and they didn't seem to understand what I was talking about. I did finally find a few lists of fiction books. I'm not going to say they're fiction books because they're still not fiction books. Some of them, there may be a few fiction books sprinkled in there. But anyway, I did pick up this book, and it's called Otherworldly. I keep calling it Worldly, but it's Wordly. Otherworldly by Yi Lum Mack. And this is a nonfiction book. It's an illustrated book of, it says words both strange and lovely from around the world. And so they give you the word and the country it comes from and what it means. And I was like, that actually sounds really interesting to me. So I already have a bookmark in here. I'm going to try to read it this month. I'm going to start trying to read it this weekend, actually. But out of all the books on all the INTJ lists, there were actually 2 on this specific list. And I wrote down the name of the website. I'm going to try to link everything in the description box in case you want to check it out, because most of these sites have, you know, lists for other personality types and astrological signs as well. But this was from booksrockmyworld.com. They actually had, like I said, 2 books out of the list that they had on their website for INTJs that I thought were interesting, but they were both of the same realm. The other one was also a book of interesting words. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty fitting. I want to give it a try. I'm excited. So the next 3 books were for my Enneagram type, and this is where I did the best. I found 3 books that I thought were interesting, and one of them, there's actually a story behind it. I'm sorry, this video is going to be long. Okay, so all of these book recommendations came from a different site, and again, I will try to link all the links below, either to the list that I use if I can find it, or just like the general website link so you can search through the site yourself if nothing else. So the first one I found comes from krystalknows.com, and she recommended Persepolis by Marjane Sarapi. And what's really interesting is I read this book in college. This is like a graphic novel, fictionalized memoir. So it's all based on the true story, but it's like the names have been changed to protect the guilty. And I love this. So I read the first part. So there's 2 separate books, or you can get the bind up together, which is what I did because I decided that I wanted to read part 2. So the first part is when she's a child and she's living in Iran. It says a memoir of growing up as a girl in revolutionary Iran. So that's the part of the story I read in college. And then the second book takes place when she's in her 20s and she goes back home and things are different, and I thought it would be really interesting. It was a contemporary ethnic women's literature class. My teacher was awful. She actually tried to fail me twice. The first time she tried to fail me was in world literature, and I actually ended up dropping that class because she gave me a 0 on my test because she didn't like the way I formatted my essay, and she didn't even read it. And she would not help me because she says I had missed too many classes. I had missed 3 classes, but apparently that was too many for her, and she decided that she hated me and she wasn't going to help me. So you can imagine how excited I was the next semester when I had to have her for my contemporary literature class, because I either needed to take contemporary literature or world literature, and I originally picked world literature because I thought it would be more fun. But anyway, I ended up loving this class. I liked a lot of the reading material that she picked for this class. But she also tried to fail me in that class. I ended up getting a B, so obviously I won her over with very hard work. I don't know why exactly she changed her mind on me, but I did this presentation on Chinese weddings, like the history of Chinese weddings and what they look like earlier on and kind of like what they look like in modern day, and I thought it was really interesting. So I give my presentation, and I give her my presentation materials and my notes to be graded, and she's like, "Where's your paper?" And I'm like, "You told us that we either did a presentation or we write a paper," and I didn't want to write a paper because I didn't trust her after the debacle that was the world literature class. And she was like, "You have to do both, you know?" And I'm like, "No one else who's done a presentation has done both." I was like, "But can I show you the handout you gave us where you said presentation or paper?" It wasn't even and or paper. So I showed it to her, and she looks at it for a long time. Then she looks at me, and then she says, "I'll think about it." And she hands me my project back after the weekend, and she has given me a B. And she kind of stopped being awful to me after that. And she very slowly melted a little bit and actually, you know, was nice to me, and like some of the notes and the feedback that she was giving me on my reading journal, because we had to keep a reading journal of our thoughts for each of the stories. So I don't know if it was because I stood up for myself and she decided to have a little bit of respect for me after all. I don't know, but I did really like this class though, and this is one of the books that was on our agenda, and I was really surprised and happy to see this on a recommendation list. It really ups my faith in the Enneagram, you know? Because, yeah, I did really like this. Yeah, I was really happy to see this because my copy got ruined. There were some, I had it in the trunk with all my other school stuff, and some of my stuff was perfectly fine, but everything that was like in the back of the trunk, it had some water damage and everything got ruined, and this was one of them. And I did want to replace that book, but I couldn't remember the title or the author, and I didn't have a clear enough understanding of what the concept was about, because I guess if I could have looked up graphic novel, memoir, and revolutionary Iran, I probably would have been able to find it, but I couldn't remember all of that. So I just kind of gave up and moved on. So I'm actually really happy to find this, because now I had the book again, and now I have part 2. And yeah, and there's all these fun memories of that teacher wrapped up in this book that I get to think about half the time when I look at it. So the next Enneagram recommendation came from imaginarybookstack.com, and they recommended Some Kind of Happiness. This is a middle grade book. I think it's a contemporary book, but it might have some light fantasy elements. So I think it's about this girl who is depressed, and so she has like this fantasy world in her head, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can relate so hard. So I thought this was really interesting, and I don't buy a lot of middle grade, but I thought it was interesting. So she has this very detailed fantasy world in her head. So as she, is having to deal with her depression, she's starting to struggle in the fantasy world because she is no longer having the energy to maintain its happy state. Again, I can relate. So I thought this was really interesting. But yeah, it's Some Kind of Happiness by Claire Legrand. If you don't know, I DNF'd Winter Spell by Claire Legrand last year. I still have the ebook, but I didn't haul the physical book. So I can still read that other book if I want to. Just because that book wasn't up my alley doesn't mean Claire Legrand doesn't have anything that's up my alley. So yeah, I thought it sounded really interesting and like something I would like. So I picked it up. And the last book I picked up, I actually saw this on the Few list, but the website I wrote down was listchallenges.com. If I can find the exact link in my history, then I'll post it in the description box. But I saw this on the Few list, and this is a Reese's Book Club book. I don't know if that means anything to me, but I have seen this book, but it's not normally something I would pick up. But I don't know. It sounds interesting. I think it's about, what is this book about? So I'm going to look off the flap to help me explain this. So Lakshmi, when she was 17, she ran away from an arranged and abusive marriage, and she goes to the city of Jaipur, and she becomes a henna artist and confidant, most in demand to the wealthy women of the upper class, trusted with their secrets, but she can't reveal her own. I don't 100% know what's going on, but it sounds a little interesting. It sounds like somebody who is strong, and she has secrets, and she knows everybody else's secrets, and it sounds like something that I would like. Maybe we'll see. So yeah, I went ahead and picked this up because why not? Also, in per normal book haul fashion, if you want to know what the naked hardcover looks like, it looks like this. But anyway, according to the blurb, after, living in this city and being around all these wealthy people and hearing all their secrets for so long, her husband tracks her down. And so, she has to deal with some things. Sounds interesting. So next, I tried to find some fairy tale poetry, and this was like a huge bust, okay? I did end up buying 3 poetry books, but none of them are fairy tale-like. Even though one of them said that it was fairy tale-like, it was not fairy tale-like. I've already read it. It was only 30 pages. So first I tried a Google search. I also looked on some Goodreads lists. I also looked on Goodreads lists for all of these, just FYI, but the Goodreads lists were not helpful. I'm sure some of them are helpful, but the ones I was looking at I was not finding anything. Most of the fairy tale poetry that came up was poetry by Nikita Gill. And Nikita Gill started off as an Instagram poet, and I've read 2 of her books, and she's just not up my alley. That's not the kind of poetry that I want. So I definitely don't want to read any more of her poetry. And that was largely what came up. And oh my gosh, her books are so gorgeous. So gorgeous. I really wish I liked them. But anyway, I finally just went to Amazon and typed in fairy tale poetry. And I tried it a few different ways, like a few different wordings. And this kept coming up, and it's Glimmer Glass Girl by Holly Lynn Walrath. And this cover is really pretty. It's really nice. But anyway, basically these were supposed to be kind of like poetry about what it means, what it's like to be a woman, at least from her perspective anyway, and you know, what you have to go through and whatnot and whatever. And it said that it was supposed to feel very fairy tale like online, but like I said, it's very, I'll talk about this in my reading wrap up. It's very beautiful poetry, but it's not fairy tale like. But in the also boughts and the recommended, people who like this book or bought this book also looked at these books or whatever. So I went ahead and picked up these other 2 poetry books, even though they're not fairy tale like either, but they are dealing with like depression. And so I was like, hey, I'm all for depression poetry. Need more of that in my life. So I picked up Swallowtail by Brenna Toothy. And to love me is to love a haunted house. It's fun to visit once a year, but no one wants to live there. Oh my gosh. I like it already. Anyway. So this is put out by some company called Button Poetry. And I don't know. It sounded interesting. So I went ahead and picked this up. And then the other one I picked up, also by Button Poetry, is Depression and Other Magic Tricks by Sabrina Benaim, and more depression poetry. And so I was like, I probably really need more of this. I need somebody who can relate to how I'm feeling. And maybe I'll feel better. So yeah, I saw this and decided to pick this up as well, even though they were not the fairy tale poetry that I was looking for. It definitely does seem like these 2 books seem like the kind of poetry that I would like. So we'll give that a try. So next I have the most fun recommendation section for myself, and this is the last section in this part of the book haul video. So I was trying to find witch books, and I specifically wanted fiction, real world witch books. So like not like higher concept fantasy, you know, made up fantasy world witch books, like our world witch books, like our actual world, not based on our world. You know, like a pocket world in our world, whatever. And I had a little bit of a hard time at first. Again, I started off on Google. A lot of the sites I went to were books I already had. And not only were they books I already had, they were books that had been out for a while, like The Witching Hour by Anne Rice, which is a book that I read in high school that I'm currently rereading via audiobook. It's a 50-hour audiobook because that book is over 1,000 pages long. I'm having a good time, but it is going to take a while. And that book was on a lot of lists, and I don't know when that book came out, but it was before I was born. So it was like, I don't know, 70s or something when that book came out. And I was like, okay, do you not have anything more recent? And so again, I ended up on Goodreads, and again, I kept finding books that was just like not what I was looking for. And again, like with the poetry, I ended up on Amazon. A lot of like, I think this was the problem with Goodreads. There was a lot of paranormal romance on there. And I'm like, I'm not looking for paranormal romance. It's like, I'm sure those books are great. I have a couple, or I have one anyway. that I've had for a while and I still haven't read, but that's not what I was looking for. I'm not looking for a romance between a witch and a werewolf or whatever. I'm looking for books with witches. Like, how hard is that? Apparently, it's really hard. But I did end up with, let me count them right quick. So I did end up with 12 books. Now, not all of these are witch books. Some of them just came up because I don't know if they came up because there actually is a witch in the book and it's just not obvious, or if they came up because people who like witch books also like those books. But I ended up picking up some books, so let me show you. So one of the books I picked up is The Woman in the Mirror by Rebecca James. I don't remember what this book is about. I think it's a dual timeline, and like in one timeline there's this, I think she's a governess. Yeah, she's a governess, and she goes to work at this manor called Winterbourne, and at first everything seems perfect, but then it kind of turns sinister. So the blurb says that the present day part of the storyline follows an art gallery curator in New York, and she was adopted, but she finds out that she is a descendant of the family, the Greys, who owns this, what I think is a haunted manor. And again, I'm not sure if they're witches or if it's just gothic, because it says this is a thrilling gothic endeavor. So, and if like the algorithms are getting witchcraft and gothic literature mixed up, I know that's the case for at least one of these books, but it sounded really interesting. So I picked this up. So the next book I ended up with is The Witches of St. Petersburg. This is by Imogen Edwards Jones. This is like historical fiction. I think it has witchcraft in it. I'm not 100% sure. It's not clear. So it says it's based on a true story, but this is definitely a fiction book. And I don't know if the witches mentioned in the stories were real people or if it's all made up. Like I said, it's not clear. But I think it's about these two women who are considered witches in the court of the Romanov, in the Romanov court. So if you're into, Romanov fiction, I think this might fall into that category. But it's blurred by the person who wrote Sex and the City by Candace Bushnell. I don't know what's going on. But I really like this cover. It might have some kind of witch in it, so I decided to give it a try. I don't know. And the next three books are all by the same author. They're all by Hester Fox. And so I picked up The Widow of Pale Harbor. So what I think this is about, it's about this guy, and he's a widow, and he's a minister, and he moves to this town in Maine. And it's also about this woman who's also a widow. And I think the townspeople think that she's a witch, and they're like really scared of her, and maybe they want the minister to like help, them rid the town of this witch, is what it sounds like it might be about. There are like some crazy things happening in this town, and the person who is doing these crazy towns is inspired by the Twisted Tales of Edgar Allan Poe. I don't know, it sounded interesting. And I like the writing, so I picked it up. I actually did check out a sample for all of these books because there were a couple other books that looked really interesting and definitely sounded like exactly what I was looking for. Some of them even had contemporary settings, because I think most of these have historical settings. But the one author that they kept recommending the most, that Amazon kept recommending it, I didn't like her writing. So I didn't pick up any of those books, but I found these, and I didn't mean to get 3 of them, but by the time I put all the books I wanted in the cart, I didn't get all of them from Amazon. I got the ones locally that I could get locally, but I saw that I had 3 books by Hester Fox, and I was like, that's fine, because I'm interested in them. And then the next one I got is The Orphan of Cemetery Hill. Again, I think the title is probably a little self-explanatory, but this is historical fiction, and it's about this woman who can talk to the dead, and somehow she gets separated from her sister when she's younger. Like, they're both orphans, and they're living with their aunt, and their aunt is trying to exploit her, I guess, for talking to the dead. And so her and her sister run away from that situation, and I guess somehow they get separated because the blurb mentions that they're tragically separated. And so as an adult, she is working with a caretaker of a cemetery, which sounds like a great place to be if you can talk to ghosts, I guess. But it sounds like she gets kind of twisted up with some grave robbers, and I don't know. I like the writing. It sounded interesting, so I picked it up. And then the last Hester Fox book I picked up is The Witch of Willow Hall. Again, this is another historical fantasy witch book. And this one's fancy. It has deckled edges and flaps. And it's going on the inside. New Old Berry, Willow Hall, Barrett House. So it's some kind of map. I'm not 100% sure what it's about, but it's about this family, and they used to live in the city, and they moved to this kind of quaint estate on the countryside called Willow Hall, and it sounds like some weird stuff happens after they move into this house, and that the children, or at least a couple of them, it sounds like they might be witches. They might have some kind of power. Again, I thought it sounded interesting. I liked the writing, so I picked it up. So this next book is probably the one that I'm the most excited about, and that is the spare book of Katrina Van Tassel, A Story of Sleepy Hollow by Alyssa Palombo. And this is probably the most up my alley out of all these books. It's like, this is what I was looking for. Again, it's historical fiction, but it's definitely what I was looking for. First of all, I love Sleepy Hollow. I love I think it's, what is it, Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp. I love that movie so much. So this sounds really interesting. It sounds like Katrina Van Tassel has like a romance with Ichabod Crane, and then he goes missing. And so she like taps into some witchcraft to try to find him and save him. That's what it sounds like it's about. It's just giving me life. And Christina Ricci's character in Sleepy Hollow, she was a witch in that movie, if you didn't know. And I love that movie so much. Every time I watch it twice. It's just so atmospheric. And so I'm hoping that this has some of those like dark gothic vibes that the Sleepy Hollow story has and that the movie has. So next I picked up an anthology, and it's called Hex Life. And I like anthologies, and so I was like, why not? I don't know if you know any of these authors. I'm a little familiar with two of them, but it's Kelly Armstrong, Theodora Goss, Rachel Kane, Sherilyn Kenyon, and many others, and Wicked Tales of Witchery. So, thought I'd give this a try. So now we're getting into the part of this recommendation that I'm not 100% sure these books have witches in them, but they showed up on a few lists, and they also were showing up on Amazon. And I don't know if Amazon was showing them to me because I have looked at them before, or if they were showing them to me because they do have witches in them. So the first one I picked up is The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins. I love this cover, by the way. That looks nice. And I have looked at this book a couple times. I actually thought about buying it earlier this year, but I was like, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about it. So I'm not 100% sure what's going on. The blurb says it's about Caroline, and they say she's a little bit odd. And she works at an infinite library, forced to work at the feet of a man who might be God. I don't know what's going on. So she works at some kind of library. It sounds crazy. It sounds fun. So I was like, look, if you think I would like this based on me searching for witch books, I will give it a chance. So this last part at the bottom of the blurb makes it sound really fun. It says that there's a cast of characters that includes a tutu-clad psychopath, a malevolent iceberg, and a lion named after an atomic bomb. And it's promising to be a ride like none I've ever been on before. Okay. So next I picked up The Beautiful Ones by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And I think the main character has telekinetic abilities. And I think she runs into the company of, I think, a magician If I'm remembering what I read at the beginning of this book correctly, her paths cross with this guy who's a magician, but he's also a telepath, or not telepath. He has telekinetic powers as well. And that's all I know. But I'm like, hey, you have me at telekinetic. You have me at Sylvia Marina Garcia. I haven't read Mexican Gothic yet, but I have it. I'm interested in reading it. And so I already had my eye on this book anyway because of that. And so, I don't know, this cover is gorgeous. And again, like with the library at Mount Char, I was like, hey, if the algorithm thinks I would like this based on my search history, then I'm going to go ahead and pick it up because it's on my radar already anyway. But the back of the blurb does say the word witch, that this telekinetic entertainer who, like I said, I think he's a magician, he sees her not as a witch, but ripe with potential to master her power under his tutelage. Sounds fun. And because I picked up that, this is not a witch book, but it's directly related to, like, I wasn't going to pick this book up yet. I also picked up Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Marina Garcia. And I picked that up because I was picking this book up and it was buy one, get one half off. And so it's like, okay. But this book was also on my radar and I probably wouldn't have picked it up just yet if I hadn't been picking this book up. So that's how that happens sometimes. But the first sentence of the blurb says, a young woman and a Mayan death god embark on a life-changing journey in this one-of-a-kind fairy tale inspired by Mexican folklore. Hello, fairy tale and folklore. Take my money. And I'm not sure there are witches in this book either. But again, not only was this book on a few lists, it also showed up on Amazon when I was looking for witch books. And I was like, look, I like Neil Gaiman. I'm not familiar with Terry Pratchett, even though I know he's very established in the fantasy world. They wrote this book a long time ago. I don't know how long ago, but it's called Good Omens. It has a very nice tagline on the bottom. The nice and accurate prophecies of Agnes Nether Witch. So I think the apocalypse is approaching, and so an angel and a demon like band together to try to kill the Antichrist and stop the apocalypse, even though they go, the Antichrist is actually a really nice guy. It sounds cheeky, and I don't know. I trust Neil Gaiman, so Neil Gaiman says that Terry Pratchett is a good person to write a book with, and I trust him. So I decided to go ahead and pick this up. Again, I'm not 100% sure that this will have any kind of witch-like vibes, or if Amazon was recommending this to me because I literally just bought The Ocean at the End of the Lane and Neverwhere, and they're like, hey, you bought some other books and you like some, I don't know, darker supernatural fiction or whatever, here you go. So I was like, that's fine. Look, we have this. And this is what the book looks like. Just in case. And the last book in this section that also was showing up on a lot of lists, but it was also a book that I have looked into a couple of times since it came out. And that is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. If memory serves me correctly, this is, I don't know if this is a 2-part timeline or if there's going to be flashbacks or what's going on, but basically, there was this school and there was these girls and it sounds like they were into some witchcraft or some other stuff, and the school was destroyed, or the girls died and the school fell into ruin. I think that's what happened. Or maybe just one girl died. I think she was eaten by wasps is what it sounds like, which sounds horrifying. And so years later, they're like making a movie based on those events, and the actors they're filming on location and the actors are experiencing some strange things. And it sounds really good and it sounds like something that I would like. I'm not 100% sure why I haven't already picked this up. I guess like I wasn't half paying attention to the blurb, so that's really pretty what they did with the leaves on the spine. So I guess I was thinking that it had a different plot than it had, but anyway, it sounds really interesting, so we have it now and we're gonna give this a go. All right, so that's it for the book recommendation portion of this book haul. The next section is me analyzing my recent books that I bought, and anything that was directly influenced by something else I pulled out, and it's going to be in this part of the video. So first up, I have YouTube influence, and these are books I picked up because I saw them in too many videos, and then I saw them in the store, and I don't know, eventually I just broke down and bought them. So there's 4 books in this section, and the first one is In the Holidays by Christina Lauren. If you watch a lot of BookTube, you've probably seen this book. It's about this girl, and I think they're in a cabin. It's her family and another family, and something happens. I already think I know what happens just from reading a little bit of the first chapter. But anyway, something happens, and she's driving home, and she's like filled with regret, and then she gets in a car accident, and she wakes up back in the house, and I think the time loop happens a few times, and then it just stops, and we play out the rest of the story. I don't know. I kept telling myself not to buy this. Even when I was in the bookstore, I was like, do not buy this book, Crystal, but I want it. And like every once in a while, I want to read a contemporary book. Every once in a while, I want to read a romance book. I'm like, look, I'm going to give it a try. It's kind of giving me vibes from that show that's on Hulu. I think it's called Palm Springs. It's kind of giving me Palm Springs vibes, even though this is set in the winter and that's set in summer. We'll see. I know it's not going to be anything like Palm Springs, but I don't know. I might like it. We'll see. And then next I picked up Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. And some people said that if you liked One to Watch, or if you didn't like One to Watch, then to pick up this book. And I did like One to Watch. One to Watch is about this plus-size girl who goes on a bachelorette-style dating show, and it's so dramatic. So I think this is about this girl. I don't know where they are. I don't know if they're at Comic-Con or some kind of Comic-Con-like event, some kind of event for nerds. And she meets this guy, and the guy secretly writes fan fiction, and she's like a big fan of his fan fiction, but she doesn't know that he's writing fan fiction. I don't know. It sounded cute. So I was like, I'll bite. I will pick this book up, and I will add it to the rotation of my very small amount of contemporary romance books that I have, and hopefully I will like this. I don't read a lot of contemporary romance, and it kind of usually makes me mad, but I don't know. It sounds fun, and I'm a nerd, so let's try it. I'm not into fan fiction, and I'm not personally into cosplay, but I'm a fan of cosplay. So we have fan fiction, cosplay, secret identities. Should be fun. And then next I picked up The Museum of Us. This is a YA contemporary book, which is always a little dicey, but kind of like Some Kind of Happiness by Claire Legrand. This is about this teenage girl, and I think she gets in some kind of accident, and she calls out for somebody named George, and she has a boyfriend. Her boyfriend's name is not George, so her boyfriend's not happy, and he's wanting to know who is this George guy, and she doesn't want to tell anybody because George is not real. George lives in the world in her head, and again, I can relate to having a fantasy world in your head. So I don't know. When I first saw this, again, like in the holidays, I'm like, don't get this. But the person who was describing this, I actually think I do remember what channel I saw this on. I don't remember what channel I saw these other ones on, but I'm pretty sure I saw this on Alexandra Rosalind's channel. And I don't know, it just sounded really good. And then I saw it a couple other places. So I added it to my Goodreads. And I was looking through it one day because whenever I buy books, I delete them off my Goodreads. Because my Goodreads TBR are books I'm thinking about buying, or books that I think I might be interested in, but I'm not ready to buy it right now. So I wanted to sit on it for a while, but I don't want to forget about it. So anyway, I was going through my Goodreads and I was deleting some books that I bought, and I saw this and I was like, I really want this. And I know I said I was on a hard YA book buying ban, but I rearranged my shelves a little bit and I had a little bit of room, and so I got this because I really wanted it. But I hope I like it. And this is what the book looks like. I just like to show you so you know what it looks like. But I'm really looking forward to reading this. I think it will be relatable or good or something. And so the last book I picked up because I saw it on too many YouTube channels, I think, is Half Sick of Shadows by Laura Sebastian. I think this was a book of the month book in June, but the book didn't come out until July. So I pre-ordered it. And this is an Arthurian fantasy retelling, and I think this is from the point of view of King Arthur's mom, which is not a point of view we get a lot or ever. But yeah, so it follows Elaine, and Elaine can see the future, and she sees disaster coming for her family. And that's all I know, because this book had me at Arthurian Legend, also had me at this cover, also had me at the title. So I'm excited. But also, yes, let's take a look at the hardcover. Okay, so there are 4 books in that section, and there's only 1 book in this next section. I called this the friends and family section, but basically one of my writing friends is always talking about what she's reading on Instagram. And I had this book on my TBR already. So this is The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. But like I said, I wasn't buying any YA books right now. And this is what happened, okay? She posted a picture of this. And this is only available on the first print run. And so I was like, oh no, I am not missing out on this, because I was not buying YA books right now. So I went and picked this book up because it's freaking gorgeous. But I also did read some of it before I bought it. And I think it's about this girl who has like elemental powers. Oh no, I like witches, so. But anyway, that's all I know, is that there's a bunch of witches who are, they think they call them ever witches, but yeah, they basically maintain the seasons and the climate and the environment. And I think if they don't, everything falls apart, which kind of sounds like a burden, but I'm excited. Also, this is so pretty. Let's take another look. Let's just soak this up. Okay. I can't even stand it. That's a good way to get me to buy a book, is make it really pretty. And then I just can't. Also, this cover is gorgeous on its own. But anyway. So that's the only book in that section. So obviously I don't get too many recommendations from friends and family, but I will say, her name's Michelle. She is responsible for most of the friends and family recommendations that I do end up with. We have similar tastes in books. She has good taste in books. So if she says that I will like it, I trust her. She's why I read House of Hollow. When did I read that? In May? Or did I read that last month? I don't know. House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland, which I read May or June. She's the reason why I read that book. So, and that was a very enjoyable reading experience. So I'm hoping I will at least enjoy the experience of reading this book, even if I don't end up loving it. I didn't love House of Hollow. I really liked it. But I gave it 3 stars because it was so unsatisfying. Most of the time, I really love the books that she also really likes. So this next section is the section that I definitely buy the most amount of books in. So basically, to answer the question of who has the greatest amount of influence, or I guess what has the greatest amount of influence on my buying habits, it's retailers. Even though I don't have any Amazon recommended books in this pile, these are all Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. Books that were in emails, books that they recommended me based on my purchase history. There are 12 books in this section. That's definitely probably the biggest influence on what I'm buying, is that they show it to me. I actually am interested in it, and then I go and buy it. So what I have in this section is I have Jiu-Jitsu, and this is by Gigi Akutami. And I'm not 100% sure what this is about. I think it's about like this priesthood and they fight demons. I think that's what it's about. The back says the Jiu-Jitsu sorcerers exist to protect the precarious existence of the living from the supernatural. So, yeah, close enough. And yeah, since this is a manga, let's take a look at our artwork, because we always love to do that. And the art is also by the author. So, yeah, thought I'd give this a try. I saw it in the email, and this mouth on the hand was giving me Parasite vibes. If you don't know, Parasite is my favorite manga. It is so dark. It's like sci-fi horror. It's the darkest thing I've ever read in my life. So, you know, I was like, maybe the covers have a similar vibe for a reason. If I like Parasite, maybe I would like Jujutsu Kaisen. So then, these are not mangas, but they're kind of Death Note branded, and this is also Books A Million's fault. So they showed me this, and this is L Change the World, written by M. So this is some kind of pseudonym. So I don't know who the actual author is. It's like, I think it's called like a Japanese light novel. So it's, if you're not familiar with Death Note, this guy gets this notebook, and if you write somebody's name in it, they die. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. The Japanese government's trying to figure out who's killing all these criminals, because the guy, Light, who we love so much, Light is using the notebook to kill criminals, but he's still killing people, and so they're trying to stop him. And so they hire the services of this young, like, detective who just goes by L. So I don't know if this is like an alternative timeline or what's going on, but there's like a terrorist attack that's about to happen, and he has so many days to figure out what's going on, or he's gonna die, because his name has been written in the death notebook. So I really like that they're counting down the number of days that he has left as the story counts down. I think that's really fun. I'm not sure how I feel about this shiny plastic covering on the book, but yeah, I saw this and I'm like, I can't. I love Death Note. Also has a ribbon bookmark, so I was like, money, here. You obviously want it more than I do. And when I was on Goodreads looking this up, because I was like, what is this? Is this a graphic novel? Because I couldn't tell from the picture, you know, and I couldn't tell from the description. So I'm like, is this a graphic novel? Like, what's going on here? There's also another one. And this is called Death Note, Another Note, the Los Angeles BB Murder Cases. And this is L again. And this says, I think it's Nisiosen? I don't even know if you can see that. I can't half see that because half of it is backwards. Anyway, so I guess this is another anonymous writer. But anyway, this is another light novel, another book with a ribbon bookmark in it. And in this, Elle is working with Naomi Masura, who is an FBI agent. And she does show up in Death Note. And she seemed like she was really smart. So I don't know. I'm just really interested. He is working with her to solve these murders in LA. So I couldn't turn this down. And if you take this off, the cover looks like this. So I'm not 100% sure I'm going to keep this on, but if I don't keep it on, I am missing half the title from the front. But anyway, I couldn't turn this down. So then, manga again. They kept recommending this, and this is Ruby, and it says story and art by Bunta Kanami, and this is Ruby, the official manga. And I don't remember what this is about. It looks like she's like fighting and stuff. It looks like there's people with weapons fighting on the back. It looks like something that's up my alley. So look at this artwork. Oh my gosh, it's great. But then they also had Ruby, the official manga anthology. I don't know, it just says it's put up by Viz Media, but it does have an illustrator in here, a Mute Tatsu. I don't know if this is an anime and this is manga based on the anime. That's what it sounds like. I'm not familiar with this anime, but yeah, the artwork is fantastic. It's so adorable. It looks fun. It looks like something I would like. I don't know. I couldn't make up my mind if I wanted the official manga or the official manga anthology. So I just got both of them. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this is a combination of being Barnes & Noble's fault and BookTube's fault. So I picked up The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I think that's his name. His last name. And this is about this woman. I picked this up. This was on my radar because somebody said it had dark academia vibes. Might have been Alexandra Rosalind's fault a little bit too. But anyway, but what prompted me to finally pick this up is that they kept sending emails out with this book in it, and I kept looking at it, and I'm like, I do want it. I'm kind of on the fence. Okay, so what this book is about is it's about this therapist, and one day her niece calls her, and one of her friends has died, and it looks like she was murdered. And her niece is in college. I think she's in Cambridge. And so she calls up her aunt for help and like for support. And her aunt, our main character, I think she's our main character, it's like, I can totally help you and I can totally figure out what's going on. And so she takes it upon herself to figure out what is going on because other girls are turning up dead. And they're all part of this group called the Maidens. And the Maidens, it sounds like it's this group of college girls who like worship this one professor. They're like big fans of this one professor. And so the main character thinks that it's the professor, but something else is going on. And he's clearly not the killer because that's not how suspense books work. So I thought I'd give it a try since I've gotten into suspense and it sounded really interesting and I kept seeing it. So I was like, why not? And that directly led to me picking up The Silent Patient. And I have heard of this book, but I never paid attention to it. I haven't seen, I think there's a movie, right? Is there a movie? I don't know. I haven't seen it. So this is about this woman. She has like this perfect life. And then one day she just kills her husband and then she doesn't talk anymore. And so I think there's a therapist. This guy likes to write books about therapists. There's this therapist, and I think she's like a painter, and so he wants to figure out what happened. He wants to help her. He wants to figure out why she doesn't talk, why she stopped talking, what happened, why did she snap. Everybody said that her husband was wonderful and perfect, but was he? Is she crazy? I don't know. It sounds really interesting. So I was like, hey, why not go ahead and pick this up too? Since I was already going out to pick up The Maidens. Oh, also, I forgot to show you what the hardcover looks like. I'm sure, yeah, it's just plain, but let's go ahead and look at it. So this next book is 100% Barnes & Noble's fault. They're not only advertising it in all their emails, they're also advertising it on their website. And that is Something Wild by Hannah Halperin. Look at this cover. Okay, I've mentioned that I like vines and stuff, so it caught my attention and I looked it up. So what do you think this book is about, if memory serves me correctly? It's about these two sisters, and one weekend they go home to help their mom pack up their childhood home because her and I think her husband are moving. And while they're there, they find out that their stepfather is abusive. And so they're trying to help their mom. And I think one of them is a little bit more sympathetic to the situation than the other one. But they're trying to get their mom to get a restraining order. And they have like some trauma that they're dealing with. And so their mom's situation like brings up some stuff from their past. And it sounds just like the kind of triggering, slightly disturbing or very disturbing contemporary book that I would like. So I'm like, let's pick this up. So next, also definitely Barnes & Noble's fault is I picked up Daughters of Sparta by Claire Haywood, and this is Greek mythology, and I think it's about Helen and her sister. I'm going to try to say her name. This is going to kill me when I read the book. Helen and her sister Clytemnestra. And this Helen is Helen of Troy, of course. And I didn't even know she had a sister because I haven't read the Iliad in a long time. And I don't even know if they mentioned her sister in the Iliad. It's been a long time. But yeah, I like Greek mythology. It sounded interesting. So yeah, it's about sisters and the kind of dismal lives that they live until they decide to break out of that. And I don't know. I'm like, I have Circe. Why not just add this to the stack of Greek mythology retellings? Next, this is Barnes & Noble's fault and Books A Million's fault. They were both pushing this book. So I picked up Hour of the Witch by Chris Bojalian, and this is historical fiction. They're in Salem, obviously, because so many of these books are in Salem. So yeah, it's about this woman, and she's married to this abusive guy, and so she's trying to get out of that marriage. She's trying to get a divorce, and I don't know if she's actually a witch. It sounds like she might actually be a witch, but in her attempts to get out of this relationship, she risks exposing herself as a witch, or she risks bringing accusations onto herself. So it's not clear if she's actually a witch or if they're just treating her like she's a witch because she has the audacity to like live the life that she wants to live and not the life that they're forcing on her. I don't know. It sounds interesting and I love this cover. So I was like, yeah, sure. Let's add this to the collection. Yeah, so we have a suspense book or a thriller with maybe witch in it. I think either way it's going to be interesting. I am hoping that she's actually a witch, but if she's not, that's okay. And then another book that is 100% Barnes & Noble's fault. So I saw this book in the email, and this is another Reese's Book Club book, and it's clearly contemporary fiction, but I don't know, there's just something about the cover that I really liked. I actually got this from Target. And I'm like, wow, it must be popular if it's at Target. But yeah, it's about like this woman, and I think she's 50. And, oh, that's pretty. She is at some, I think it's a vacation property, but anyway, she's at this place called the Paper Palace with some friends of her and her husband's. And she sleeps with her best friend, who's not her husband. He's married to this other woman for the first time, and they've been friends for a long, long time. And apparently at one point in their youth, I think there's going to be some flashbacks. There's definitely going to be some flashbacks. At some point in their youth, I don't know if they were going to like, you know, be together and be in a relationship together, and they didn't because of some kind of trauma or something. So the relationship never happened, and in her adulthood, they hook up outside while her husband and her best friend's wife are just chatting away inside, and she feels guilty. But it's like, I think this whole story like takes place like overnight or like the next day or whatever, when she's like, it's a short period of time while she's trying to make a decision on if she wants to leave her husband for her best friend or if she wants to stay with her husband because her husband's great. I don't know. It sounds interesting, and it's like, I must be getting old if things like this are interesting to me, but it is. But yeah, it looks like it's going back in time between the past, and so it looks like the past chapters have the date, and the present chapters have the time. So yeah, I think this takes place over the course of the day after she sleeps with her friend and she's trying to figure out what to do with her life. So life doesn't end at 50 apparently. So I'm excited. It sounds interesting. But yeah, this is The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller. And yeah, contemporary literary fiction. So the next book that's definitely Barnes & Noble's fault is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. And even though I have seen this around BookTube and I have seen this in emails that may have even been on my Goodreads TBR because of those things, I actually ended up picking it up because I was in Barnes & Noble one day and I was browsing the new release section, and I used to never go in that section, but now every time I go in there, I'm like, let's just browse and see if we find anything. And I saw this and I picked it up. I like Greek mythology. I like retellings. And Ariadne is a princess of Crete and sister of the Minotaur. And when Theseus comes to kill a Minotaur, she helps him and then runs off with him. And I guess they go on adventures or something. Or maybe that's the whole plot. I don't know. That's just what the blurb said. And yeah, it sounds fun. And it sounds like something I would like. So I picked it up. So these next few books are in a section I just called accidental recommendations, and this is what happened. So with this first one, I bought the Paper Palace from Target, and after I put it in my cart, Target was like, do you want this? And I was like, I don't know, what is that? So we have The Stranger in the Mirror by Liv Constantine, and it's about this woman, and she was in some kind of accident, and so she doesn't remember what happened, but she feels like she did something terrible, and so she doesn't have any memory from like the last few years, and so her husband is trying to help her like recover her memories. And that's all I know. It sounds interesting. It sounds like a couple other books I have. But those all sound interesting. So I ended up picking this book up too because, I don't know, Target was acting like people who bought the Paper Palace maybe also bought this book. I don't know. So if I end up really liking this book, it would be a huge plus for Target recommendations because that has never happened to me before. Like I've seen recommendations, but I never actually bought a book from a Target recommendation before. And the last book, this was 100% an accident. I have never heard of this book or this author. I have never seen this book anywhere. Basically what happened when I was typing in the beautiful ones into the search bar at Barnes & Noble to see if they had the book, this came up. And this is Beautiful Disaster by Jamie Maguire. This is contemporary romance. I do not know what happened. I don't know if it was the butterfly. I don't know. I pulled up a sample of this to read online, and I just kept reading it. And it's not even like the writing is that great. It's not. It's just, I don't know. There's just something about it. It's just charming. I don't know. I couldn't stop reading. And I want to know what's going to happen. So I picked this book up because Barnes & Noble said they had it. And it's about this girl named Abby, and she's in college, and she's trying to be good, and there's an insinuation that she wasn't always good, and she meets this guy who's definitely not good. They have what sounds like a dramatic romance, and it's not my kind of book at all, but I don't know. I'm getting vibes of Paper Princess by Erin Watt because when I read a sample of that, I literally read the entire sample on Amazon's website and then immediately bought the book so I could keep reading. And even though I really liked that book until the very, very end, I'm not sure it's a good thing that this experience is reminding me of that book. But hey, like I said, I really like Paper Princess up until a certain point. It's an interesting book. It's a little trashy, but so I don't know if this is trashy. It's not trashy yet. From the sample I read online because I read all of it because I couldn't stop reading. So we'll see what happens, but this situation, the reason why I wanted to include these two books in this video is because this situation does happen to me. I'm typing in something else. In fact, I think in my last book haul, one of the poetry books I picked up was exactly that situation. I was looking for another poetry book. I typed in the entire title and some other book came up. And so I ended up picking both of those books up. So this actually happens to me a lot. This is just 2 books, so it doesn't happen like so much that's responsible for most of the books on my shelves, but it's definitely responsible for a large enough percentage that it's worth mentioning. But this is definitely not something I would normally pick up. But yeah, every once in a while, I find myself picking up a contemporary romance book and being mad at myself later. But I don't know. They're not all the same, right? So, all right, so that's it for this video. If you want to know, there were 39 books in this video, and I'm not going to put them in my quarter 3 book haul. I will try to remember to just link this video to that video when I get to that book haul. But anyway, yeah, I thought this was fun. I like talking about books, okay? I like buying books. I like talking about the books that I buy. Yeah, I think I have a nice variety of books here, and yeah, feel free to share where you find book recommendations. Are you influenced by book emails? Because apparently I am. And also, like, how do I find specific book recommendations? Because even though I'm happy with the witch books that I picked, I would still like more like modern day contemporary settings if I can find some. But I am very excited about the witch books that I have picked up, even the ones that I'm not sure they are witch books, but I'm still excited about those as well. And I'm excited about everything. I'm even excited about the holidays. I feel like it shouldn't be, because it's just not the kind of book that I'm usually happy when I finish reading it. But, you know, I'm just determined to find a contemporary romance book that I don't get mad at some point. It has not happened yet, but I believe in the world. I believe that it can happen, okay? So, anyway, I had fun. My footage for this video is so long. This video is going to be so long. But that's okay. It's okay. All right, so that is all for this video. I don't know what's happening next week. I'm pretty sure my June Illumicrate box is going to show up at the same time as my July Illumicrate box. But there's a chance I will have my Fairy Loot one and my LitJoy by the end of next week. So I can put those, or by the end of this week. So I can put that in a video for next week. Fingers crossed. And I don't know, maybe it's because I've had to wait so long for these book boxes, but I've decided that I'm going to get a Fae crate, a bookish box, and I'm going to try to get an Owl crate for August because I know what book is in there. And it's really funny because they have the same theme as Illumicrate for August. They both have a dark academia theme, and both of those books are already on my Goodreads TBR, and they're both books that I already want. But yeah, that is all for this video. Yeah, I had fun. So hopefully this video is not a hot mess, because I feel like it's kind of a hot mess on my end because I've been filming for a little while. I'm pretty sure this is the longest video I've ever had to edit, but that's okay. So I will see you guys next week in some kind of video. I don't know what it's going to be, but I will move things around again if I have to. And yeah, film a video because it's fun, and apparently, you know, it can boost my mood a little bit. I don't know. I like my books. I like being surrounded by my books. And I'll see you guys next week. And yeah, I hope you're having a great July. And bye.